Fantastic Four movie, so they can keep the print of the movie locked up and out of sight, in order for them to work with 20th Century Fox to make an actual, intended to be released Fantastic Four film, with an appropriate budget. Jump to 1995, and Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire director Chris Columbus was hired to write and direct a Fantastic Four movie, and he teamed up with GoldenEye scriptwriter Michael France in order to develop the script. But Columbus decided to walk away from directing duties, where instead his production company 1492 would co-produce the film. According to IMDb, Columbus, whose company was now overseeing the production, as mentioned, wanted the movie to go more balls to the wall with its comedic tone, to be more in line with the campy 1960s Batman TV show. In fact, many directors who would subsequently be considered to direct the movie all had a history of making comedy movies. Heck, even its eventual director, Tim Story, has a lineup of comedy films under his belt. However, it was Story who insisted to Columbus to tone down the comedic elements, citing Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, in that superhero movies can have humour but also be taken seriously and have serious elements. And yes, there is lots of wacky humour in the released film, and I wonder if that does go back to Chris Columbus's original intentions. And I think the humour in the Fantastic Four film did turn people away. But hey, just imagine, the movie probably could have been even more outrageous with its comedy hijinks. Number 7, an onslaught of directors coming and going. As the production went forward, it seems that this particular production couldn't seem to be able to find a director who would stick around long enough to see the project through, as it was going through directors like it was going out of fashion. Over the following years, several directors would be hired but eventually drop out, including Tommy Boy director Peter Segal, George of the Jungle director Sam Wiseman, then Raja Gosnell, but he dropped out to direct the Scooby-Doo movie instead, as well as future Ant-Man director Peyton Reed. Interestingly, Reed said that his version of Fantastic Four took inspiration from the Beatles movie A Hard Day's Night. In other words, A Hard Day's Night, only less Beatles and, well, more superheroes. Wow, just imagine Fantastic Four, The Hard Day's Night version. With directors coming and going, and the release date constantly being pushed back, this surely was one turbulent production. I mean, the only thing that could possibly make this production crazier would be if at one stage they hired, a Goonie to direct the movie. Oh, thank God that didn't happen, because that would have been weird. Number 6. Then a Goonie was hired to direct Fantastic Four. So with the Fantastic Four production having more potential directors than I've had hot dinners, the production then looked to former Goonie and Sam from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Sean Astin, to direct the film. Aston really wanted to direct Fantastic Four, as he wanted to extend his talents to film directing, and thought that if he directed a Fantastic Four movie, then that would give him some clout. You know, some street cred in Hollywood, so to speak. And it did seem that negotiations were going forward, however the studio were a bit dismayed by the fact that he hadn't directed a movie before, and so these plans didn't go through. Finally, Tim Story was hired as director, as the studio was impressed with his action comedy Taxi, which he also made for Fox. That, and he was a fan of Fantastic Four. So the production now had a director. But then there was the script, which was a whole different animal. Comic book writer Sam Hamm, who also worked on the script for the 1989 Batman, was hired to make rewrites to the script. But a few years later, Twin Peaks co-creator Mark Frost was then hired to also make rewrites. And he would be credited alongside Michael France, who was previously working on a script with Chris Columbus. But Wikipedia suggests that Simon Kinberg, who also wrote several X-Men movies, did some uncredited work on the script, as well as director Tim Story himself, on the account that Story saw the Pixar movie The Incredibles and thought that the movies were going to be too similar, and so changes would have to be made. It supposedly was also Story who wanted Fantastic Four to be a special effects heavy movie. Now granted, a lot of special effects would be needed. I mean, we're dealing with superheroes who can stretch and fly around in flames. But yeah, the movie is quite heavy on CGI and loud action set pieces. Probably more than your average superhero movie of that time. So do all the glossy effects make for a fun popcorn movie, or are they all just obnoxious eye candy? Well, that all depends on the beholder. Number 5. Casting possibilities. So with the production now on track, the task was now at hand to find actors to play the iconic parts of the Fantastic Four and their nemesis, Doctor Doom. When Chris Columbus was at the helm of the movie, he really wanted real-life married couple at that time, Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, to star as Reed Richards and Sue Storm. When Sean Astin was in negotiations to direct the movie, according to Wikipedia, he envisioned Christina Aguilera as Sue Storm. IMDb offers some other insights into who could have been cast in the Fantastic Four movie, including Paul Walker as Johnny Storm, but the part would be cast with Chris Evans. Now he seems familiar. Oh yeah, that's right, he's that guy from Not Another Teen Movie. John C. Reilly and James Gandolfini were considered for Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, but the part went to Michael Chiklis. When it came to Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, actors being sought out were Hugh Jackman, George Clooney, Brandon Fraser, and Mads Mikkelsen auditioned, but the role went to Welsh actor Ioan Gruffudd. As for Sue Storm, some of the candidates include Charlize Theron, Kate Bosworth, Julia Stiles, Scarlett Johansson, but it was Jessica Alba who was cast, and I swear that at that time, many teenagers had a poster of her on their wall. And finally, when it comes to the movie's big bad Doctor Doom, actors considered were Jude Law and Robert Downey Jr. But the part went to Australian actor Julian McMahon. Incidentally, Julian McMahon is the son of former Australian Prime Minister William McMahon. What a twist, huh? Number Fantastic Four, filming fiasco. Despite being set in New York City, Fantastic Four was filmed in Canada, namely Vancouver, British Columbia. Sadly, during the shoot, Jessica Alba suffered a kidney infection, which got so bad during the filming of the scene at the space station, she nearly fainted. Michael Chiklis found it very uncomfortable wearing his Thing suit, which consisted of big, bulky, and no doubt very heavy prosthetic bodysuit. In fact, he would even have to wear big prosthetic teeth. Really, the only time the suit came in handy was when filming on the streets of Vancouver during the winter, in which the suit actually kept him warm. One day, his wife turned up on the set to visit him, and she saw him in his Thing costume for the first time, completely unprepared, and was so shocked with what she saw, she completely freaked out and lost her composure, and needed assistance to be escorted off the set. Naturally, being Welsh, Ioan Gruffudd would have to learn to speak with an American accent. But he really struggled with this, as the script would be constantly changing, to which he would constantly be having to learn new lines and thus try to incorporate these lines with his fake American accent, which apparently was easier said than done. For the scene where Steve Richards and Sue Storm were